Your fingers cannot feel the leather strap anymore. You know you are holding it. You can see your hand wrapped around it, but the sensation has vanished, replaced by something that feels like gripping wood through a thick cloth that isn't there. The rain has been falling for hours. You do not remember when your cloak became this heavy. The wool has drunk so much water that it pulls at your shoulders like a second body hanging from your neck. Every step makes a sound you have grown to hate. The wet slap of leather against mud, the sucking noise as the road tries to keep your foot. You look down. Your shoes are gone. No, you look again. They are still there. They are just so coated in mud that they have become part of the road itself. Brown lumps where your feet used to be. You cannot remember the last time you saw the actual leather. You try to shift your pack. Your shoulder does not respond properly. You try again. The movement is slow, clumsy. Your joints feel like they belong to someone else, someone older, someone who should not be walking anywhere, let alone on this road. The rain hits your face, and you do not even blink anymore. You just keep walking, because stopping is not an option, because you are still so far from the town, and because you made a decision this morning that you are starting to understand may have been the worst decision of your life. The morning had been ordinary. You remember waking under the roof of the inn. The straw was dry, the fire had burned down to embers, but the room was still warm. Through the small window, the sky looked uncertain, but not threatening. You had packed your things, you had eaten bread, you had paid the innkeeper and stepped outside. The air smelled like rain, but that did not mean anything. You had traveled this road before. The journey would take maybe 4 hours, 5 at most. The town was close enough that you could see the church tower from the ridge if the weather was clear. You did not see the church tower that morning, but you did not worry. You started walking. The road was dry enough at first. The grass on either side was wet with dew, but the path itself was firm. You made good time. You passed the old stone cross about an hour in, which meant you were making better progress than you expected. Then the rain started. It was not dramatic at first. A few drops. The kind of rain that makes you shrug and pull your hood up. You could have turned back. The inn was still close enough to reach in 20 minutes, but you did not turn back. Why would you? The rain was nothing. The town was still well within reach. You had travelled in weather like this before. You were not made of sugar. A little water never hurt anyone, and so you kept walking. That was the decision. That was the moment. You did not know it then, but you had already made the choice that would turn a 4-hour walk into a fight for survival. The rain got worse. It did not happen all at once. The sky just seemed to remember that it had been threatening rain all morning, and it made up for lost time. The drops became larger. They came more frequently. The road began to change. At first, the mud was just a nuisance. You felt it under your feet, sticky but manageable. You adjusted your stride. You looked for firmer ground near the edges of the road, where the grass was still intact. But the edges of the road began to disappear. The rain was not just wetting the surface, it was turning the soil to soup. The ruts from cartwheels became troughs of brown water. The stones that had been embedded in the road were now loose, shifting under your weight, threatening to turn your ankle. You stepped carefully. You stepped slowly. The journey, which should have been halfway done by now, was barely a third complete, and still you did not turn back. Because turning back meant admitting you had made a mistake. Because the town was still ahead. Because the rain could not possibly keep falling like this much longer. Except that it could. And it did. The trees on either side of the road began to drip constantly. Each branch, each leaf had become a small faucet. You walked under them when you could, hoping they would offer some shelter, but the rain was too heavy. The canopy was too thin. The water found its way through. You began to notice your clothing. The cloak was not just heavy anymore, it was cold against your neck. The wool had become a sponge pressed against your skin, and every time you moved, It released a fresh trickle of cold water down your back. Your tunic was soaked through. Your shoes were full of water. Each step produced a squelching sound from inside the leather. You could feel the water moving between your toes with every stride. Your feet had been numb for a while, but now something new was happening. You could feel them again. But the feeling was wrong. It was sharp, hot, like needles being pushed into your soles from inside the shoe. You stopped to pull off the leather, and what you saw made your stomach tighten. The skin was white, shrunken, pruned and raw. There were red spots where the leather had rubbed, and you could see that the blisters had already broken. The water in your shoes was not just rain anymore, it was blood. You put the shoes back on because what else could you do? You kept walking. The road began to slope upward. Not steep enough to be a hill, but enough to make your legs ache. Enough to make your breathing heavier. Enough to make you realize how much of your energy had already been drained. You started calculating. How far had you come? How far was left? You tried to picture the road from memory. The crossroads, the old mill, the bridge. The bridge. You stopped walking for the first time in what felt like an hour. The bridge. There was a river before the town, a small one. You had crossed it dozens of times. It was barely more than a stream in summer, but now it had been raining for hours. You started walking again, but faster now. The fear was quiet, but it was there, growing in your chest like something alive. You told yourself it would be fine. The river had never been dangerous. You had never seen it dangerous. You had never seen it after a day like this. The road curved, and you saw the river. The bridge was still there. That was good. The bridge was still standing. But the river beneath it was not the river you remembered. The water was brown, thick, moving with a force that you could hear from 100 paces away. The sound was not the gentle burble of a stream. It was a roar. A low, constant roar that seemed to vibrate through the ground. You approached the bridge slowly. The wooden planks looked wet, but they were still there. The railings were still there. You could cross. You would cross. You would just be careful. But as you got closer, you saw what the water was doing. It was rising. You could see the edges of the bridge where the water was already licking at the supports. The river had swallowed the banks. The bridge was becoming an island, and the water was still rising. You stood at the edge of the bridge. Going back would take hours. Hours in the rain, hours with your ruined shoes and your bleeding feet. You had already come too far. The town was just on the other side. You could see the outline of the hills. You knew the road. You stepped onto the bridge. The planks were slick. You moved slowly, carefully, one hand gripping the railing. The water was roaring now, so close. You could feel the spray. You could feel the bridge vibrating under your feet. You were halfway across. A log hit the bridge. You heard the impact before you felt it. A dull crash that shook the entire structure. Your hand slipped off the railing. Your feet lost their grip. You fell, not off the bridge. You fell forward onto the planks. Your knees hit the wood with a crack that you felt more than heard. And for a moment, you did nothing. You just lay there on the bridge with the water raging beneath you and tried to understand what had just happened. Your hands were wet. Your knees were wet. The bridge was wet. You could not get any more wet, but you could fall into the river. You understood that now. You understood that the bridge was not safe, that the water was not just dangerous, it was deadly, that if you fell into that brown, churning current, you would not come back up. You crawled. You did not walk. You crawled across the remaining planks, keeping your body as low as possible, your hands gripping the edges of the wood, pulling yourself forward inch by inch. The bridge groaned. The water hit another piece of debris, but you kept moving. And then your hand touched grass. You were off. You were on the other side. You lay there for a long moment, breathing hard, your face pressed into the mud. The rain continued to fall on your back. You could feel it seeping into your clothes, into your hair, into your skin. You had crossed, but you were not safe. You were just on the other side. You got up. Your knees were bleeding. You could feel the warmth against your cold skin. You tried to stand straight. Your back protested. Your legs shook. But you stood. You kept walking. Because what else could you do? The town was close now. You knew it was close. You could not see it through the rain, but you knew it was there. The road became steeper. The mud became thicker. You could feel the exhaustion in your bones now, not just in your muscles. It was deeper than tiredness. It was the feeling of a body that has given everything and has nothing left. You started talking to yourself.
It's so cold.
Just keep walking. Just a little further.
Rain never ends.
The town is right there.
I have to keep
You
moving.
looked up. You could not see the town. You could not see anything except rain and mud and the road disappearing into grey. You stopped. You stood in the middle of the road and you tried to think. You tried to make a decision. You tried to understand your options. You could keep walking into nothing. You could turn back toward the bridge. You could find shelter. Shelter. That was the only real option. But where? There were no buildings, no houses, no barns. Nothing but wet fields and trees dripping water and a road that seemed to go nowhere. You started walking again. Not toward the town, but toward the edge of the road. You needed to find something. Anything. A shed. A hollow tree. A place to get dry. You could not die on this road. That thought was new. You had not thought about dying before. You had thought about being uncomfortable, being tired, being cold, being wet. But dying? That was not supposed to happen on a simple journey. That was not supposed to happen on a road you had traveled before. But here you were, and your body was failing, and the rain was not stopping, and you could no longer feel your fingers or your toes or your face. You pushed through the hedge at the side of the road. The branches scratched your face. You did not feel them. You kept pushing. You kept moving. And then you saw it. A light. Through the rain. Through the grey. A flicker of orange that could have been your imagination or could have been a window. You started walking toward it. You fell. You got up. You kept walking. The light grew brighter, closer. You could see the shape of a building now. A small cottage. Smoke rising from the roof. A light in the window. You reached the door. You tried to knock. Your hand did not work. You tried again. You hit the wood with your fist, but it made no sound. Your hand was too numb. You could not feel the impact. You hit it again and again. And then the door opened. Warmth hit you like a wall. You fell forward. The last thing you remember is the heat. Not just warmth, heat. The kind of heat that makes your skin feel like it is burning after hours of cold. You are on the floor. You cannot move. You cannot speak. The cottage is small. There is a fire. There are hands pulling off your cloak, your tunic, your shoes. They are talking to you. You cannot understand the words, but you can understand the tone. They are saying, you are going to be fine. Your clothes are steaming. You can see the mist rising from the wool. You can see the firelight reflecting off the wet stones on the floor.
We must move.
The rain continues to fall outside, but it is not falling on you anymore. You are inside. You are alive. Your hands are slowly beginning to feel like hands again. The pain comes back, sharp and bright, and you have never been so grateful to feel anything. The cottage has a roof. The cottage has a fire. The cottage has a door that closes. You are going to live. But as you lie there, watching the steam rise from your clothes, you cannot help but think about the road, about the river, about the decision you made this morning. You could have turned back. You should have turned back. You almost did not make it. And now, lying on the floor of a stranger's cottage, with the heat slowly returning to your body, you realize something. The rain never killed you, but it came very close, and the only reason you survived is that you found this cottage. The only reason you survived is that someone built a fire. The only reason you survived is that you got lucky. You look at the door. You think about the road outside. You think about all the people who started walking this morning and did not find a cottage. You think about all the people who started walking yesterday. You think about all the people who will start walking tomorrow. And you wonder how many of them will survive the rain. The fire crackles. Your hands are beginning to warm. And you understand something that you did not understand this morning. The journey never ends because you arrive. It ends because you find shelter. It ends because the door closes behind you. It ends because you are inside when the rain is outside. If the rain had kept falling for another hour, another 30 minutes, would you have found this place? You do not know. You will never know. The rain is still falling outside. The cottage is warm, and you are still alive. But you cannot stop thinking about the bridge, the river, the mud, the darkness. You cannot stop thinking about the people who do not find the cottage, because you know now, with a certainty that will stay with you forever, that the rain does not care. The rain falls on everyone the same way. It is not the rain that decides who survives, it is the shelter, or the lack of it. And you, tonight, you found shelter. But there are so many nights, and so many roads, and so many people who keep walking because stopping is not an option, and so many people who never find the light in the window. You pull your hands closer to the fire, you listen to the rain, and you think, how many times could I have survived this? How many times did I survive this without knowing? And how many times am I still going to walk into the rain, believing it will be fine? The fire dances, the rain falls, and for tonight you are safe. But tomorrow? Tomorrow you will walk again. Tomorrow there will be another road, and somewhere the rain is waiting. But that is a problem for tomorrow. Tonight you are warm. Tonight you are alive. And that is enough. The question is not whether you would survive the rain. The question is, what would you do differently? What would you change? When would you turn back? What would you carry? Where would you seek shelter? And how many times would you keep walking, believing that you were almost there before you realized you had been wrong? There is no answer to that question. There is only the road, and the rain, and the choice you make when the rain starts falling. You are not a historian. You are not a storyteller. You are just someone on a road with a destination in mind and a long way to go. And the rain is starting to fall. Again, what will you do?